Well, hey there, friends. How are we today? I myself am a little down in the dumps because I, for various life reasons, needed to cancel my trip to the Reader Studio next weekend, which sucks not just because I paid for that portion of it already, but because I'm not going to get to go, and I was so looking forward to it. I've never taken a class or a workshop or, even an online class. I learned, on my own. And when I started, there wasn't even YouTube back then. We had America Online when I started reading. So that sucks, and there are obviously worse things to happen in life, but I'm gonna feel really down in the dumps a week from Thursday when I know everyone who's going is arriving and getting, their free gift from Llewellyn and whatnot. But if you want to take my place, I think there's still a day or two left to register, so you can check out their website. But that sucks. But anyway, in lieu of pouting, I wanted to do a quick discussion of a book, quick, I guess, by my definition, a quick discussion of a book that I just finished reading, which I think is really, really, really exceptional. And it is, so here's the all right, so this is reading the Marseille Tarot by, can you see it, J.M. David. I think it's Jean-Claude David. I think that's where we're going with this. Now, this is not the book. This is me being dumb. So the book itself is available at lulu.com and through the author's website. And it's not cheap. It's, I think, about $55 US. But there is an ebook edition. And so what I decided to do was buy the ebook edition. And then within about 20 pages, maybe even less, 30. I wish I had this book so I could write in it. So then I thought, oh, should I, and I'm not a big writer in books, especially tarot books. Like, I just don't do that usually. Oh, should I go now and buy the physical book? But it's so expensive, and I already paid. The ebook is only $14. So I already paid for that. And then I thought, well, it's a PDF. And I paid for it, so I could print it, and a lot of the cost, I think, of a self-published book is the printing. So I figured in that case, well, I could print it. So I did, and then I took it to Office Mat or Staples to get it bound. But it's huge. I mean, it's whomp. They had to do it in two, because it's 538 pages. And ultimately, between the printing and the ink and the binding, it cost me slightly more than it would have to just buy the print book. So I recommend that if you are going to read this, that you get the print book and don't be an idiot like me and be impatient and want it right away, or, be cheap like me. But if you don't think you're going to write in it, and you really don't think you will, and you don't want to lug around 500 pages, then do the ebook. Because either way, I think it's really worth it. Now, it is Marseille based. It's about the Marseille, and it uses the Jean Noblet Tarot, which I did a walkthrough of. Now, I bought this before I actually started reading this book, and it just took a while to get here. But if you look at my walkthrough of this deck and compared with the Chemois, the Jodorowsky Chemois, which is a Converse style deck, that deck is a little bit later than this one. This is theoretically sort of the first known Marseille style, although it's from Paris. They're so similar that, yes, you'll miss out on some details in the minors, but there are a handful, like I think the 6 through the 10 of swords is missing from the original deck in the French library, and all of the majors are reprinted in black and white in the book. And fairly large, so if you're working with another Marseille deck, you're not going to be completely lost coloration wise, yeah, but and in fact, if you do get the ebook, the benefit of the ebook is, I think I think these are in color. But there's that. But honestly, um, it's not so dramatic that you have to go out and get the noblet. They're not noblet. Um, the structure of the book is really there's an introduction, and then essentially there's 30 chapters. It's stuck here. This is why getting the original book is better than my janky bind. There's 30 chapters, and then each chapter is one of the majors plus a foreword, an introduction, a chapter on pips, a chapter on courts, a chapter on number, a chapter on virtue, a chapter on readings, eschatology, and metaphysics, a chapter about astrology. Um, so there's a couple additional chapters. All of these tabs that I put in, and I did it on both, are actually primarily from the non-major chapters. So this, in a way, is kind of like the 78 degrees of wisdom of the Marseille. So it goes through each of the cards, and what he does a beautiful job of is stripping away all of the um, uh, accumulated associations over the years, and he tries to get back to the root of the original image, or as close as he can get. So he looks at mythology, Greek mythology, Roman mythology, architecture, cathedral pictographs, petrographs, um, all kinds of paintings, and also the Sforza decks, the Carriale, Visconti, um, a couple other contemporary as in of Marseille deck period, um, and he explores the card from what may have been its source and not what has been. I mean, if you think of the Marseille Tarot in a way as kind of an antique piece of architecture, and um, over the six this when did this deck come out? Doesn't really say. I believe it was I'm not. So let's say it was the 1600s. I don't remember the date, and you're not going to want to watch me look for it. Anyway, let's say it was the 1600s. In all of the years that have followed, from Papus and Atea, I don't know how you pronounce that. I don't know if anyone knows. And the Golden Dawn, people have painted on new coats of meaning. Um, what this author is doing is kind of saying, okay, sure, now let's strip away those layers of paint and look at what may have been the original intent, aside from its esoteric um, meanings. Maybe there were esoteric meanings given. Maybe it comes from a cosmology. So anyway, so he does that for each of the cards, and then he explores it in the context of the time in which Noblet was doing his woodcuts, as well as in the time leading up to it, what philosophies and whatnot may have been active at the time, and then he kind of weaves it into the religion of the time. So the one thing that may be a turnoff for some folks is that it's not oppressive, but there is a strong relationship to Christian symbolism, because it's in there. You can't avoid it. I mean, at the time the deck was made, you were likely to be Christian regardless of where you were. The video that I did on jobs in the tarot was inspired by this book, although it was inspired partly by his discussion of class, of the pip cards as class, in the time that they were made, and sort of how that kind of plays out. There's only one chapter specifically on the pips, and it could be a whole book. I actually hope that he one day writes another one about the pips in particular. But he talks about how as the pips evolve, you can look at it as more of something. Or in some cases, you can look at it as a piece of cake or a cake, right? So as you have a cake, as you cut it into more slices and hand it out, there are more pieces of it, but its power gets diminished, which is something I've never heard of um, in a description of the pips before, and it's an interesting analogy to think about how, yes, sometimes the pips depict an expansion, but sometimes they also depict a weakening of an energy. There's like that pureness of the ace that gets weakened as, more are added or it's cut up. So his discussion of class made me think of the job. So that's where that came from. He's a little bit more general. He talks about each of the suits and kind of its meaning as an element, as what it, as cups, as containers, and where they come from. That wands is the only element that doesn't need fire to be made. He views the elements slightly differently than other tarot readers do, but interesting. There's some really good exercises in here. His discussion of the course is really good. And even just like interesting, like if you like exploring the imagery on cards, he has this chart of, crowns and sort of what they mean or who they would have been relevant to, at any given time in Europe at the era. So, there's just so much that I highlighted and I don't do that for a lot of books. He's got a lot of interesting exercises, not a lot of spreads. There's 2 spreads, and I think I'm going to do a demonstration of one of them in at the end of this video. I always go back and forth on that when I'm talking about another writer's work, because on the one hand, it's his intellectual property, and so in a way I feel like doing a demonstration is kind of breaching the contract between writer and reader, or student in this case. But if it is an interesting spread, and if it gets you to buy the book, which I hope it does, if you're interested in this. So I did a lot of the exercises. I didn't do all of them, but again, another thing I can say about myself is I'm not one who necessarily dives into the exercises in a book. I'll say, oh yeah, that's a good idea, and then never do it. These, I did a lot of them, particularly when it came to sort of laying out all the pip cards and looking at them. And there's exercises where you sort of explore, the Marseille style pips, which are pips, and the arabesques, what he calls the arabesques, the decorations on them, and kind of how that suggests, in some cases, like freedom or constraint. It's just really, really a beautifully thoughtful, big, delicious, deep dive into the system. It's not going to be a book that like gives you examples of how he reads. It's not necessarily going to tell you like, here's how you do a beautiful reading. The Jodorowsky book, the Bendov book, Camellia Elias's book, those go into more about how things fit together. He sort of plants a seed and lets you figure it out. So if I had a critique of the book, I'd love to just see more of his examples, because his technique is so unique and specific that I care, to see what he does, and I want to know how they're done. But he does reference some online writing, and he, I probably should have looked at his website. But I really wanted to share this because I just finished it last night. It can be a little academic, and when it gets a little academic, it can get a tad brittle, a tad dry. But that's not uncommon, especially with decks that are or books that are looking at history so closely. And for a book that's this large, I was never bored, and I never felt like, oh, I should skip this part. So I really, really recommend this book. I recommend, again, not being a dummy like me and getting the e-version and deciding it. Again, like if you really think you're not going to want to write on it or highlight it or print it, get the ebook because it's cheaper. But if you are a writer, highlighter, tabber, um, or if you think you may want both, I don't know. I mean, I'd probably buy the paper book. Also, I just like this was slightly easier to work with when I was sitting on the couch because I could like fold it over and a book's a book, but I don't know. So anyway, I would recommend buying the actual book if you can because it has a cover and whatever. But I really think it's brilliant. Um, this, by the way, I saw in Nobody Here did a video on Marseille books, and I actually had read most of them, but I hadn't even heard of this one. And I thought, oh, I don't need another. But I'm so glad I did. So glad I got it. So thanks to Nobody Here for that video, because otherwise I wouldn't have read this. So I recommend it if you're looking for a book. It's also worth noting that the new Yoav Bendov book will be out sometime next month, which I'm excited about. I have that on pre-order. So I think that I'm going to shut up about this, and I am going to demo the spread as an act of homage to the author of this book, and hopefully to entice you further into digging into the world of this big. It's set up like a course, so each chapter is a lesson meant to be done one a week. So it's like a 30-week course. I did not take 30 weeks to do it. It's not about the spreads, so that's why I'm sort of giving myself permission to do that, I guess. Or I'm just a jerk. I don't know. But I want to show it to you because I think it's cool. And if it entices you to read it, like the Council of 13 hopefully enticed you to read Camellia Elias's book, then let's just let ourselves off the hook. So I'm going to stop this and I'm going to go move to the camera and we'll look at it. All right? Be back in a sec. All right, here we go. 1650, by the way, the novelette was made. And so I was close. I am going to use the Noblette deck because it's the one he uses in the book. You could do this spread, I guarantee, with any kind of deck. I hope I'm not losing people in my recent videos who are not interested in Marseille style or Pip style decks. It's just I have said this before, and I'm obviously going to say it again right now. The way it's kind of freed my readings and allowed me to get earthier and more pentacly coiny practical readings even just in the couple months of working with them has been huge, and that's been such a as I've talked about many times, it's been such a goal. So it's a 6-card spread, and essentially he calls it the dynamic hexagram spread, and it's based on I Ching, which I do not have a relationship to. But let me hold this up. I probably should have. So the way that it works, you can see here. You could see here if I were not holding this so badly. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So the first card is the beginning. You read that. The 6th card is the close. You read that. But then you read cards 2, 3, and 4 as ABC. So these 3 cards get read together. And then 3, 4, and 5 are DEF. So they get read together. And you can also read 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 5, and 6 together as well. And so what you're getting is a 6-card spread, but you're actually theoretically using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in theory, you're getting like more cards than you would. You're looking at different combinations in different contexts, which to me is really, really interesting. And one thing that's interesting about, I keep using that word, oh my God. One thing that I like about this spread is that the first card, if you don't have a question, and we all know how I feel so strongly about having a question, but if we don't, shuffling with a camera. Someone make a YouTube video about how to do that elegantly. There's a tag. How to shuffle elegantly with an audience. The first card gives you either, he says, the opening card gives what is present as an underlying impulse in the situation at hand. It may also indicate what the reading is actually about in cases where either there is no specified question or when the ensuing reading seems to address other than the supposed question. So I'm going to say that this is a general reading, and we'll let the first card give us a sense of the reading's theme. All right, so we'll say that this is for someone who has come in and they want a general reading. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And of course, the lighting is terrible. Why wouldn't it be? I'm very, mopey today. I do have to beg your pardon. Let me move the light so you can actually see better. That is better. My fake British accent. All right. So I'm going to do this really quick. So card 1, as I said, gives us the theme of the reading or what is present as an underlying impulse. Cards 2 and 3, he says, can be looked at as part of clarification for card 1. Then the situation at hand is described as manifest in ABC. This is basically a 3-card reading, which may show forth various pertinent aspects. This situation is, of course, never static, he says, but in a permanent state of transformation. This is what DEF, cards 3, 4, and 5 show as sort of a new card reading. The suggestion sees ABC transformed into DEF. And then the closing card gives an indication for the manner in which the future pulls the situation into its sphere. Again, here, cards 4 and 5 can be looked at upon clarification. So it's specific enough that you get a sense of, what the overall combinations are. It's vague enough that you can interpret it based on your own kind of cosmology or tarology, your view of how the card works and what you can do with them. I'm going to, again, be pretty general with it right now because it's not a real reading. But so we get the 10 of Wands as our theme. And so the theme suggests to me, again, I'm going to be really kind of base level meanings with this. It suggests the completion of creative work, a job in particular. And so if we look for clarification in cards 2 and 3, it's a job, probably potentially a freelance job, but that did provide some financial stability in it. So a job that may have been kind of a freelance job, it was a lot of work, but it did provide some financial stability. So looking at cards 2, 3, and 4, in this case as A, B, and C, this is the situation at hand described as it manifests, the various pertinent aspects. So in essence, what we get is a sort of interesting journey from working hard to working hard. So it seems like this was this describes kind of a freelance gig to me. That was a lot of work. So now we're looking at these cards. So now I'm kind of on my own to find financial stability again, and that's going to involve doing work. It's going to have to involve now going out and finding that work, finding the stability. So where before I was a freelancer who had the stability, now I'm sort of taking this away. I'm out of my own again. In order to have stability, I'm really going to need to go in and do work. Because the 8 of Wands suggests like deep, hard work, right? 8 can also, be a double of 4. So you could get the suggestion of, more creative stability. This job, and all the work it was may have, doubled my abilities. If we look at the wands as abilities to do hard work. And so I may have learned new skills. So that will make me more viable and more stable, but the work still has to get done and it has to be found. So that's how it's manifesting now. So the work on this freelance project is over and it's brought me stability. But now I have to go out and look for the stability in finding new work. Um, so now I look at these three, and this is sort of how DEF shows the new 3 card reading, um, where sort of the initial 3 were transforming. So what, and again, I'm being very, very simple here, but interestingly, right? So financial stability based on the new work that I did may be found in teaching. Um, so there could be a mentorship opportunity, or an ability to teach others, to take on apprentices, to show others the way. So finding a kind of stability in life with the skills and the work that I'm doing may, with the hermit here, indicate teaching, leading others. So I may want to, or I may be in a position now where I'm transitioning from the freelancer to kind of a journeyman, for to kind of change the cadence, or not the cadence, but the concept of the hermit into, like an educator. There's still kind of, if we think about the hermit and the fool, there is kind of a rhyme, a visual rhyme with the cards. They each are carrying something. They each have a walking stick. They're each walking. They're looking in opposite directions. They're walking towards each other. Where the fool is sort of naked and being attacked and sort of silly, the hermit has grown, is more mature, and has wisdom that he can pass on to others. So in essence, the fool kind of transforms into the hermit in this case. So that's where I'm getting freelancer to teacher. And so now I look at the 6th card, which is sort of the close, but I can also incorporate these 3 cards together as well, if I need to. There's the sense with the 7 of Cups of sort of an internal emotional fulfillment, sort of like a drawing within and feeling really good, and feeling kind of a growth that comes from bringing others into this work. 7s for me involve kind of a turning inward, and you just have this sense of expanded growth with the arabesques on those cards, on that card. So the kind of future manifestation may be sort of a deep emotional internal fulfillment as we move from kind of wand coin, very practical, very work, to something a little bit more spiritual. Which, if we do look at the 3 cards, seems justified, in that the work again, the hard work and the effort in this role as teacher seems to bring fulfillment, emotional fulfillment, internal. Now, this isn't like a relationship fulfillment. This is kind of a sense of what we're doing has purpose. It within us creates a feeling that what we do matters, an internal sense of good. So one thing that's common to do with Marseille decks too is to kind of look at what a lot of writers refer to as visual rhymes, and how do internal, especially with the pip cards, how do the sort of floral elements on them add layer to the reading. I don't do this that much, but I could, and just sort of, and this is something I'm kind of working with. If I look at an overall theme, the things I would normally do is I would say, well, we've got 2 trumps, so this is probably a big time in your life. We've got 2 wands, so this is stuff you're passionate about and it's stuff that you work hard doing. So those are the overlying themes. I don't have any repeating numbers. I did do a little bit in terms of how the fool transforms into the hermit in a way. If I look at the individual situation, the 10 of wands, there's a little bit of growth there, but it almost feels like the floral energy is spent. You know what I mean?
it's like the creative juice, the creative vibe, like the growing part of the card. Like these are wands, right? But they're kind of cut off. So it's like the work that we did provide stability, but it was hard on us. So we're done with it and the project is complete, but it kind of left us with a little bit of like um depletion, sort of growth depletion, you know. The stability for finances and for our life is really flourishing. I mean, if we look at the sort of plant life arabesques here, it's exploding outward, you know what I mean? So this probably left us pretty flush, um you know, monetarily. But again, as we go to the 8 of Wands, um the plant life is a little bit bigger, so there's more growth. It's like these little sort of leaves are beginning to blossom, which may have like a result, this sort of work of finding work, right? The work of finding work may sort of reignite the energy that was sort of depleted here. These start to grow in part from kind of going within, as the Hermit and the 6 of Cups 7 of Cups represent, but also in teaching others how to do what they do. You go from kind of journeyman to master. The others are the apprentices, and so you're not putting out the same kind of hard energy. The energy that you're actually putting out is a bit more emotional in that case. So in that sense, you can look at the arabesques, the decorations on the pips, and sort of find within it more meaning, which is not something I have done a lot of yet. But as I'm working with Marseille and other pip decks where such flourishes exist, it is interesting to explore them. You know, now this is a pretty easy reading to do with nobody in front of me. You know, like if I said to somebody, "Oh yeah, you just finished a big freelance job that brought you some stability," and they're like, "No, I work for a corporation, um, and you know, I just, you know, got laid off," then that's a different, right? You know what I mean? Like I immediately saw, you know, finishing a project, full freelance, to, you know what I mean? So, you know, this is a lot more specific than I would usually get. But if someone said that to me, "Oh, I just worked, you know, I worked in a corporation and I just got laid off," well, yeah, you know what I mean? I can still see that here. You worked hard for a long time on something that you know, I don't know if you were passionate about it, but you definitely dedicated yourself to it. Now you're kind of set off on your own, looking for stability, because now we have the Fool looking at the 4. You know what I mean? So it would be a different reading if they told me I was wrong. But, you know, that's the benefit of doing imaginary readings. Ain't nobody gonna tell me I'm wrong about nothing. So anyway, that's this spread, which I really like, in this book that I really, as I said, think is exceptional. So these are my 2 volumes of it. Again, as I've said before, if you can get the print book, I definitely wish I had. But I think it's fantastic. For the small flaws that I found in terms of its length and dryness in some places, it absolutely makes up for it in just fascinating approach to this system. And that strips away, as I said in the little intro review part, like all the decades and centuries really now of esoteric paint that have been applied to the tarot. And I think there's something valuable. I don't have, you know, a particularly spiritual esoteric view of the cards. I never really have. And I think one of the reasons why I've been so drawn to this particular way of reading is because of that, because it doesn't call on things that haven't quite made sense to me. Um, to me. And that's not to say they don't make sense. It's just they haven't resonated with me. Kind of going back to the theoretically the earliest images and what they could have been influenced by, um, un uncolored by the later work of The Golden Dawn and others is interesting to me. And but even if that's not interesting, or if that's not as sexy to you as it is to me, I think there's still a lot to be said for going back to the beginning of a system as close as we can get and exploring it. So anyway, I think this is a wonderful, really exceptional book. As I said, it's not cheap, but I think it's worth the money. You don't need the Noblette deck. If you have it, great. If you have another Marseille 1 or 2 deck, the Dodal should be okay. I don't have that one, so I don't know how good it is, but he references it here. The Conver he references, a couple others, from the period of the Marseille decks. Marseille, you should be okay. So anyway, I'll stop rambling. Great book. I really recommend it. Have an awesome week.